Welcome to Edu 111, which is Foundations of Education. So we are going to look at some issues regarding the foundations of education. The bedrock of what we'll be talking about is philosophy of education. Philosophy is basically the origins of everything that we can talk about in terms of learning, in terms of education. So, how do we define philosophy? To make a headway in this, we need to attempt a definition of philosophy. It is not a new term, but I will tell you how you can easily define philosophy. The word philosophy comes from the Greek word, two Greek words, philia and sophia. In ancient Greek language, the word philia means love, and philia means wisdom, and sophia means love, loving. So from those terms, it becomes simplistic to say philosophy means the love of wisdom. Now, loving wisdom would mean that you would want to apply knowledge in a wiser way. So, technically, we can define philosophy outside of the purview of the derivation as personal attitude to life and the universe. Sometimes you hear people talk about their philosophies of life. That means they are talking about their personal attitudes, the values that they hold dear onto as a way in which they relate with the universe. So personal attitude to life can of course be considered as a philosophy. In view of academics, you can define philosophy as a method of reasoning. A method of reasoning, or the logical analysis of language. A method of reasoning or the logical analysis of language. That is how you can approach the definition of philosophy when it comes to looking at it from academic perspective. From personal perspective, don't forget it is attitude to life. But when it comes to academics, you have to reason about phenomena. So you have views coming from different schools of thought, which of course your own observation and reasoning may agree with or disagree with. So when you begin to apply such method of inquiry, it will be considered as what? Academic philosophy. There are models of philosophy you would have to come across when dealing with philosophy of education. So philosophy of education basically attempts to explain the phenomena in education. So there are a lot of things, perspective, theories, and so many things we can talk about in education. So philosophy of education does not only give us the origins of all of this, but attempts to explain what education is to our better understanding. Therefore, we can talk about these models. The first, speculative philosophy, prescriptive philosophy, and of course, analytic philosophy. When we talk about speculative philosophy, it implies that critical way of reasoning, of thinking, or assuming things about the universe. So when you observe the universe, you see how things are placed, you begin to wonder about existence of certain phenomena. You can do that systematically and critically, and then insinuate. So when you insinuate, you'll be able to put forward certain assumptions. Take for example, Charles Darwin observed what happens in a habitat. And after his observation of various organisms and life in a habitat, he then came out to speculate about life. And his speculation has been a wonder that, changed the world about existence. Don't forget, speculative philosophy is born out of what? Assumptions. But for you to assume something, you must first of all do critical thinking, following an observation of what? A phenomenon. From speculative philosophy, which of course enables a lot of theories of education, we can equally talk about prescriptive philosophy. Prescriptive philosophy attempts to lay out standards for judging or assessing values. So if you want to analyze a value, if you want to prescribe or make a law, a principle for something which people would have to follow, that takes the process of what? Making prescription. So prescription cannot just be made without someone undergoing the philosophy of things that will enable that prescription. So you want to judge a value, you want to assess a value, and then establish it as a rule, it has to follow prescriptive philosophy. So when we talk about theories, for analyzing things, for explaining things, theories born out of what? Prescriptive philosophy. The last model I'll be talking about is the analytic philosophy. The thing about analytic philosophy is that it attempts to explain and give meaning to phenomena. When you look at things, you may not know the meaning of what that is, and there are a lot of people out there who may not know the meaning of what that particular thing you observe is. But when you begin to find meaning, someone gave that particular phenomenon a meaning. The meaning is born out of him being able to observe, study it, and is capable of what? Allotting meaning to that phenomenon. So when you come to study the meaning of things, you'll be capable of what? Doing evaluation of things. You'll be capable of what? Explaining situation. What enables you to do that is analytic philosophy. Under this analytic philosophy, there is a link between prescriptive philosophy and analytic philosophy, because some theories might have been prescribed for use in explanation of certain things. So when you take a theory to explain certain phenomenon and you call that analytic philosophy, that is very correct. But that theory comes out of what? Prescriptive philosophy. Now, these are the things you need to know as basic factors that will enable you to understand education as a whole. So now let us talk about the relevance of philosophy of education. What is the relevance of philosophy of education? Don't forget, education is a means by which you can broaden your intellect and acquire more knowledge. And you can do that with a lot of efforts you put in to evaluate things carefully and then coming up with assumptions. Now, how will philosophy of education help you to learn and be a better person or intellectual? That takes us to the significance, to the relevance. One, philosophy of education provides insight to the meaning of education. So if you want to talk about the meaning of education, first of all, a critical observation of it will enable you get insight. That itself is what philosophy of education doing something, because you are thinking deeply. So therefore, you're going to get what? Results. Number two, when we talk about the importance of philosophy of education, is this: it enables a deeper understanding of phenomena. Some people will just see things happen and then they will look at it from the periphery, and from the periphery they will not be able to connect dots and get some understanding of that phenomenon. But with philosophy of education, you can make inquiry, you can ask questions, you want to know the what and you want to know the why. So all of that will enable you to have a deeper understanding of phenomenon, whether social or natural. Number three relevance is that The third relevance is that it can equip teachers and learners with logical perspective, especially when they are making an argument or trying to validate opinions and arguments. So philosophy can provide such critical perspective for both teachers and learners. More so, philosophy of education can enable us identify the various schools of thoughts about certain phenomena. You know, when things happen, some people will come and start giving you theories that, oh, it happened because of this. And some other people come and look at it from another angle and say, oh, it is because of this. So those differences create what we call schools of thoughts. For example, in terms of existence, there's a school of thought that will say there is no God. And another school of thought says there is God, and God is the supreme force behind everything that exists. While those who are talking about there is no God just believe that everything takes shape by accident. So we have different schools of thought when it comes to perspectives of things. And finally, philosophy of education can enable us, whether teachers or learners, to be critical in making evaluation. You know, why do you learn and afterwards you're given exams to write or an assignment to do? It is because you are to be tested of how critical you can be in evaluating circumstances, in evaluating phenomena. So as a learner, you are expected to be capable of what? Thinking critically. So philosophy will enable you do that and to give you a good shape of intellect.